Impro Theater and the cast and crew of this online performance would like to take this time to honor the indigenous peoples of the ancestral and unceded homelands we each inhabit, and to consider the legacy of colonization and its far-reaching effects.
Well, if you are watching or listening live on Saturday, August 14th, 2021, thank you for being here. If you are listening to this sometime in the distant future via a podcast, we thank you for your ears. Our tech and OBS operator, open broadcast software operator today is also a guest. Dionne neglected to finish college, choosing to play drums in bands instead. He moved to LA to get into acting, went to the Groundling School, has done sketch comedy, has a sketch series called Intelligent Design. During the pandemic, Chris has been running his own Twitch channel, streaming video game content with a focus on chat and community interaction and story-driven games. He also co-runs a comedy and gaming YouTube channel with another friend, which is called Co-op Comedy. Please welcome Dionne. While I move on to our next guest, Ariel Gray is here, currently working on Black Girls Love the Bard. She is a stage manager, streaming technician, theater kid since a young age, began streaming virtual theater with the National Women's Theater Festival in 2021 with our very own Mikki Marvel, no doubt. In addition to virtual works, Ariel volunteers with Raleigh Little Theater as the house manager, which is a lovely thing to do. If you want to get into theater, be a house manager. Ariel works as a writing coach, unlocking creativity writing workshops, and when not in the theater sphere, Ariel is catching the latest animated feature flick at home with the family. A proud graduate of UNC Greensboro. Please welcome Ariel Gray. Mikki Marvel is a streamer and artist in North Carolina, a virtual technical director for both Women's Theater Festival in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Impro Theater right here in Los Angeles, as well as the virtual production manager of comedy and theater troupe Pineapple Shaped Lamps. Mikki provides targeted one-on-one marketing coaching for nonprofits and artists. Ding, ding, ding. Contact Mikki for that. And as the founder of Raleigh Community Meetup powered by Twitch, Mikki shares her streaming knowledge and experience with the public via her Streaming Bootcamp for Artists program. For more information, please visit mikkimarvel.com, MIKKIMARVEL.com. And to follow Mikki on social media, visit twitch.tv/MikkiMarvel. We will also hear from Arlo Sanders. He is a musician, an actor, a comic, a casting director, a technical director at the Outside In Theater in Los Angeles. He's been performing stand-up and improv forever. He's a member of or has produced and directed shows at Impro Theater via the Impro Theater Lab, including Hemingway Untold and improvised Quentin Tarantino. Welcome, everyone who is here.
Hello.
So Arlo is going to be here virtually via video. Chris, do you want to roll that first clip just so we can kind of get an Arlo taste?
Sanders. I'm the technical director of Outside In Theater, and I have been performing at Impro Theater for a really long time. And at the advent of the pandemic, we discovered how to do virtual shows online, and I ran a lot of them. Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.
That worked. It worked. Who knew? Impro started live streaming shows before the pandemic, and just to reach the worldwide audience, etc. So I think by way of like just a kickoff, what is a big challenge, or what was a big challenge as a result maybe of the pandemic, or maybe just a result of some other circumstance in capturing live theater and putting it into this box and setting it out into the world? That something that you encountered that you felt maybe was a challenge or a frustration, anything at all. Anybody can take this.
I'll just want to jump and say it was a challenge because I didn't know how to do it. So it was something to one of my local theaters was an aspiration, but nobody knew what to do. And then Mikki came into our lives.
Oh, how did that happen? How did Mikki come into your life? What theater was that?
Yeah,
Carrie?
with the town of Cary, the Cary Arts Center. I'm a physical stage manager for Cary Players,
In
and
person. You're a
in
physical stage
person,
manager. Yeah. You,
in
you
person,
know, when we stream virtually, we leave our physical body and go to more like a
yes.
ghost form.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know what? That does happen.
So this is North Carolina.
This is North Carolina. Yeah, based in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Sure.
So in the Triangle area, um, on stage. Yes. So with what I did is, I've been a follower of the National Women's Theater Festival for a very long time, and it was kismet. It was a meet cute. It was midnight, and an email came up, and it was like, want to be a part of the women's theater fringe lab, and there was a streaming cohort, and I went, wow, that's exactly what I need to learn. So it was really coincidental, and the lovely Mikki Marvel is was one of my facilitators.
And Mikki still facilitates.
To me, yeah, absolutely. Mikki is still my facilitator, and someone told me, "No, you collaborate with Mikki now," and I was like, oh, "I don't know."
That you was there any expectation that you had that couldn't get done, or was there anything that you thought couldn't be possible that that was? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, I honestly, it was the people aspect, the coordination of people online. Because as a stage manager, I mean that's the gig, up front. But trying to get them in a virtual space, knowing now you're dealing with homes, external noises, and just what is their technology. Not everyone's coming on the same place. If everyone can get to a stage, then you're on equal footing. But in a virtual world, it's just how do I manage that? What do I need to know? What terminology? Look, in person, right? Versus virtual. What terminology do I use to communicate with everyone? And so that was the surprising part about it. I was expecting the design aspect. I was expecting streaming of all I know is gaming. So I just knew that this video is going to go here and someone's going to watch it. But we learned a lot about just managing people, how to talk to them, how to make sure, how to like really translate the stage manager side to streaming. So I was really surprised, and that's been very helpful.
have you
Immediately
been
helpful.
have you been a gamer for a long time?
I'm a watcher.
Okay, all right.
I take the best naps during game. You just look. Oh, Chris's voice right now. I'm gonna try to stay with you, but I mean, Chris, if
See
you
you
start
going.
talking about what you're doing, if you start narrating, I'm gonna take a wonderful nap. I love gaming. I'm a watcher, proud supporter. My partner plays Magic: The Gathering, so it's a lot more of that.
Cool. Mikki or Chris, anything about the transition challenges, about taking live things and putting them into the streaming world? Yeah, just about your transition from, because you worked at the Broad Stage in Santa Monica, just your transition from the live theater experience and what it takes and what you've witnessed and what you've experienced as a performer yourself versus trying to squish that all into a stream. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah. At the Broad, I personally I worked front of house, so I didn't really have any experience with running tech backstage. So it was sort of nice in a way to learn all of this tech in this totally new way without that experience in a way, just because it gave me sort of a blank slate to start with. But thank God for Mikki, because she is a tech wizard, and has just made everything so smooth and easy. And anytime I'm like, OBS is doing something weird, she's like, I got you, don't worry.
Nice.
Little
And
did
I
you
would
know
share. Oh,
What?
the show. I was gonna say, little did you know the show it's Mikki and how great Mikki is.
dear
Yeah,
Right.
this is
Mike.
There you go. And
I-
go.
It's a
I was-
positivity intervention.
I was going to say that I think like an interesting challenge has been like educating audiences because I love Twitch and I've loved Twitch for a while. And of course, sometimes as we do, we assume all people are just like us. So I think one of the most interesting, you heard from Mike Rock that I also have a background in marketing. So just one of the really interesting things, right, is like, okay, how do we tell people, for example, on Twitch, hit the heart button. Please don't send me a friend request. I barely know where those are and I don't look at them, as an example. And there's a lot of like little things, right? When you're a user, you may not think to communicate to an audience, but this is so new for everyone, including them, and everyone needs that experience, needs that help.
Absolutely. I know that we did, and without Kirsten Farrell and Nick Clark, who were running, excuse me, in past tense, Impro Theater School at the time of the pandemic. Now it's just Nick alone, but without them to get the school online and teach Zoom classes, I don't know where we'd be. And without Arlo Sanders, who we'll hear from again in a second, and Alex Kahn and Maddie Goff, we wouldn't have had shows up and running. There were a few of us who acted as Confederates or helpers or assistants, but they really did all the heavy lifting of making sure that we figured out how to get online and that sort of thing. And then later brought on Mikki and other techs, because it was a big, it was a big transition when it's one thing. We started doing a show called The Portal, which is our online version of our improvised Twilight Zone show, and we started doing that a couple years ago on Twitch because there was a whole group of people who were like, we should have a Twitch channel, and we did like a 3-camera shoot in our theater space, and we bought a streaming converter and et cetera, and successfully did about a year's worth of shows. And it was great, but that was in addition to doing all of our live theater. So it was sort of like a dipping our toe in the streaming space. But then when the pandemic hit, suddenly it was like, oh, if we want to keep doing shows, everything has to be online. And it was a big transition. Chris, could you play that next clip from
Absolutely.
Arlo?
I think honestly, right at the beginning, the biggest hurdle was just getting over the grief of not physically being in a space and connecting with people in that way, especially the way that we play and in second circle and everything. I think that was a big hurdle for me. It was a big emotional hurdle. And once we sort of decided, hey, let's do shows, and there was like the show started on Zoom at Impro. Then the next hurdle was, how can we try to make these shows the quality of the shows that we had on stage, how can we do our best to make these shows that same quality but virtually?
Yeah. That was a big thing. There was a lot of hand wringing and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears about, like, wait a minute, we have a certain reputation. Our company and our school shows have a certain reputation for our onstage work, and what happens when we, are we making compromises, when we bring it online? A question, Doc Farrell has put a question in our Zoom chat from Twitch. Why does Impro stream exclusively on Twitch and not YouTube and or Facebook?
I can go on a whole platform rant.
I'm gonna let our virtual technical director, Mikki Marvel, address that first.
Yeah, and one of the first things that I'll say is that we just kind of internally, some of us have talked about kind of revisiting this as an overall conversation. But for now, I'm just going to talk overall about platforms. Well, and I guess it's also worth mentioning that when Impro first started streaming on Twitch, so like Arlo and Alex Khan and Maddie, they decided that Twitch would be their exclusive platform. But platforms, Twitch, very cool, very hip, basically all things live streaming, and for the most part, only live streaming. So that's, and typically like it's like a 50% millennial audience, 20% Gen Z audience, 13 to 17. Facebook doesn't align with the values of really most companies, I would say. And yes, like I guess you can make the argument that neither does Twitch because it's owned by Amazon. So that's like a totally fair point. But just like for me personally, Facebook is like, and also definitely an older audience, and just from like a streaming tech health perspective, just sometimes I'm streaming on Facebook and it's fine. It should be fine, but it's not fine. It's on fire because it just is. It's decided to be. So those are some of the reasons for Facebook. And then YouTube is and right, like can have like an educational audience, which is like an interesting thing about it. National Women's Theater Festival, for example, was streaming on Twitch. Very similar to how Impro Talk was, and they transitioned to YouTube. And they use like unlisted links that talk to like tickets. So basically they just kind of found that that works well for them, and they're also still doing pay what you can shows, but just like through YouTube, and just like making people reserve a ticket to just kind of like, in a way that kind of gives you some of that theater experience, right? Yeah, okay, I gotta get a ticket. It's just part of it. And as far as like doing multi-platforms, too long didn't read for that, is that a lot, basically if you have to do a Facebook and another platform, it's gonna cost money. And usually when I say that to a theater, they're like, actually, I'll pick one, is typically what happens. But really the biggest thing with platforms in general is just, you just kind of got to find the one that works for you and works for your audience and that you like. So my little rant about platforms, y'all.
That's great. And it does, it does make sense that sometimes you do a thing because it's the first thing that you were introduced to, or it's the first thing that you learned, or whatever it is. I know that with OBS and other streaming uploading services, you are able to stream multiple platforms, but like you said, the platforms themselves are like, hold up a second.
Please wait. Yes.
And complicate things, because why wouldn't they? It's sort of like, I guess the analog in real life is you can't, if I'm going to do a show at one theater and then I want to do the same show at another theater across town, either one or both of them is going to say like, yeah, could you please pick one of the theaters?
Yeah, that's exactly true. Like when you're an affiliate on Twitch, you can't multi-stream with Twitch and another platform because that's part of the contract. Yeah.
Chris or Ariel, did you have thoughts about that you want to add?
No. I will do what Mikki says.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to do a side note though, because I know that we're not talking, I know that this didn't ask for like other platforms like Zoom, but when is Zoom a really good platform to use? Y'all, there was one time when I did this show and it was like really experimental, and the host invited people to like unmic and then howl. And that is a perfect example of when Zoom is the right platform for you, because with Twitch, you could howl right now in your home, howl for me, and I will have no idea that it's happening. I'm so sorry. It was a wonderful show, but it had to happen on Zoom, like it had to.
It does sound like fun. It's weird. I don't hear often about other platforms. It might just because I'm not on YouTube a lot and that sort of thing, except for as a viewer. But I don't hear a lot of the various platforms doing like streamer friendly updates and fixes and that sort of thing. It seems like Zoom works Zoom seems to work really hard at trying to be user friendly by saying like, we've updated this and we've added this and that sort of thing. Is it happening on other platforms where they're fixing things and adding things and that sort of thing?
And by so Zoom does make a lot of updates, and I'm gonna say that like Zoom like is a webinar platform. It's not meant to be used as a streaming platform. Yes, we've been doing that, y'all. We're doing the best with what we have. What are the tools we have? That's what we're using. But it is meant to be a webinar platform, and I would definitely agree with you, Mike. Like as far as webinars go, it is like, what else can we do? We have the world. Let's do more. And then as far as like our streaming platforms go, I mean, Twitch does make updates. Does YouTube and Facebook ever make updates for streamers? I'm thinking about it now that you asked that, Mike, and I'm like, I literally can't think.
YouTube has actually been innovating. YouTube, I think, has actually been trying to keep up with Twitch and possibly even overtake them in the live streaming game. They've been adding some features that Twitch has had for live streaming for a while that YouTube has not previously had, and in some ways, I would, from what I've seen, I haven't been in the streaming game as long, but from what I've seen recently, it looks like they've actually been trying to one up Twitch and just be like, okay, well, if you guys, because it seems to me that Twitch rolls out updates slowly, and YouTube is kind of like, okay, well, let's do this right now and get this going. They seem to be more proactive with the updates that I've seen from them recently, but we'll see where that goes.
Interesting.
Another question Doc has put in from Twitch. It must have been a huge transition going from live theater with an audience to streaming where you're not hearing from your audience. There's no audience there. I can say as a performer, yeah, that was a thing. Although, as an actor, I've done on-camera work where, there is no audience except for whoever's on set. But yeah, when you're used to doing improvised plays in front of a live audience, and there's that sort of tactile kind of or at least just a sense of humanity sharing a room together and experiencing the energy in the room, and then you're doing it from your living room or something without that. It is different. I don't know. It's hard to describe the effect, but it's definitely different. Does any of you all have a thought about that?
Lots of thoughts. If I can share here. It's that, I mean, it's the energy, absolutely. And I feel I come from an in-person stage manager lens, and sometimes my cues, they can be set to whatever I believe, but sometimes the audience is the thing that you're cueing. Well, what's funny one night is not funny the next night, and you can hang on to a joke longer, or you can you can create an awkward silence, and some people get it, and it's almost it's different to not, that part of the creative process is you're just trying to find another way to do it. So it has become a little much more technical, and that it's myself that's creating that. So as a streaming tech, I am with the actors through Zoom. I am the audience. I am their stage manager. I am also the technician for the lights and sounds and scene changes. So so I always try to imbue kind of that energy and imagine that I'm watching them and enjoying them just as someone else. So I mean, usually they cannot see my face, but they know in my voice that I'm excited to see them. So I kind of, like you're playing to me, someone and I'm enjoying it, and just try to really communicate that from the beginning, so they know that, because it's hard to create the same energy when you're sitting in your bathroom. That's that's not the place where, maybe it is, if that's where you do your studies, that's where you get into character, then this is the time for you. But just trying to create that space, and honestly verbally creating that space, letting them know that I am present, not a robot. But it definitely was a huge transition, because I relied on the audience. So I didn't realize how much I relied on the audience. I took it for granted. Oh no, I'm sorry, everyone. I took you for granted.
And I'd like to share, like, in another way that there's been a transition for the better. I was not a stage manager of any type before this started, because you take one look at me and you know exactly how I'm feeling at all moments. So when I'm stressed, I'm like, you know, and I do not hide it. So I make a terrible stage manager, except for virtual theater, where my camera is off and I can mute myself. So something happens and I'm just like, hey, everybody, we have to take a little 5. We'll be back in a minute.
Same thing. You'd be a great in-person stage manager. Same thing. Just make sure the God mic is off and you're good.
Yeah,
I like that you weren't muted, but you did the fake yelling. Sorry, that's for the podcast listening audience. Chris?
Yeah, I've definitely. I mean, the audience plays such an important role in the energy, especially in the world of comedy. You know, because comedy is very you have a very symbiotic relationship with the audience. You know, joke, laugh, and it sort of feeds itself in a way. And in a virtual space, you don't have that at all. And working with Impro virtually it really highlighted that, because I've been working virtually with Impro for a few months, and then we did recently 90s sitcom, where they were emulating, they were improvising a 90s sitcom live, and we had a laugh track for it. And just that first night when we did it, using that laugh track, all of the performers was like, "This is amazing! There's just so much energy immediately just by adding that one element back in, even though it was being done manually, but still it created that familiar space and gave that energy that everyone was used to. So it's so different virtually."
Yeah, that was Marian Yusufu and Tatiana Godfrey's co-direction, and I was the producer of those shows, but I just basically said, like, that sounds great, go for it, that sounds amazing, and those were so much fun. Yeah, and the laugh track was so funny how it just worked, because it's emulating a sitcom. Let's see, can you roll that next Arlo section? I think he had thoughts about that, pluses and minuses of moving to live streaming.
Like a technical improviser, the pluses are we're having the technology at our disposal, and sort of the fun around trying things and seeing if it was possible to live score a show, if it was possible to play music simultaneously with someone else who wasn't in the same room. So I think the actual, like, the exploration and discovery of different ways that we could play was a huge plus for me. And obviously the minuses, just coming back to it, not being present with people, makes things a lot more challenging. And I think as an artist, especially some of the Zoom shows where you're thinking about changing your background, and you're also trying to stay in the scene, it gets to be a sort of like a mental gymnastics game that you have to play to really stay in it. So that was, and still is, I think, kind of a minus for me. But on the plus side, I really think the discovery of what can be done, and also the accessibility to which people can communicate and play with each other in different countries, and that people can still, there's still things that we're discovering about this technology that allows us to be creative in new and interesting ways.
Agreed.
The glass half full. Mikki, I see that Doc Farrell has commented in the chat as the jam producer. Do you want to be our steward for that?
Oh, and read it aloud. All right. Doc Farrell, our moderator here, as well as the producer of the jam, says, as Impro jam producer, I really rely on the support of Chris as our tech improviser / stage manager / steadying force when we're live streaming less than 3. Truly. Truly.
Hey, that's
inspiring.
a heart emoji.
I know. I just think less than 3 is adorable as well.
It is.
Doc, I forgot that you could actually talk to us on this.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm just gonna go with it and not
I forgot.
question
I was
our
like-
host.
I'll
So
go
Doug is
back to the
here.
mute show. No problem.
So weird. I was like, wait a minute. She could have just said that.
Yeah.
It was just that Mikki had commented. Listen, y'all.
Chats.
Chats.
So eventually what's going to happen is people are going to get vaccinated, and we're going to be able to do more real life things. But talk about things that you like, since live streaming is a thing unto itself, and always since its inception it has been a thing unto itself. It's just that a lot of us jumped in as a result of the pandemic. What are some things that you want improved in the capabilities of doing online shows, or either doing live online shows, or live theater, or live music show? What are some like technological improvements, or you know what I mean? Like just something that you think is on your like pie in the sky wish list of like, gosh, if this could happen, it would be great. Anybody can start. Or you could do like rock, paper, scissors.
Let's do it. Rock, paper, scissors, right? All right. Rock, paper,
Oh wait, are we
scissors,
doing
Oh,
rock,
good
paper,
Lord.
scissors, shoot? Or
Yes.
just okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Normal
And we're
people.
doing it with all of us. Okay, good. Good.
Ready?
Great.
And rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
I went early, and we all picked scissors.
God.
And we all pick
Okay.
scissors.
All right, well.
I'll
So
just
we
go
all have
real
to talk at
quick.
the same time.
Yeah, we all have to talk at the same time. Ready, set, go. I you said pie in the sky. If we could have anything, it would be just like just like a company will send equipment to their employees if needed. It would be so cool. And we're so right. Yeah, Mikki, inspired by you. It would be so cool if you could automatically set an actor up with a care package of the things they will need for the show. And I know that is being done in small ways, but I feel like that is the future, where you have a set of microphones, you have a set of ring lights that someone has access to, because and not that it's the fact that we can all be here together in different time zones, with all walks of life, that it's made theater itself so accessible to me, personally, like feeling that inclusivity. It would just take it a step further if the technology could also be shared, like the best technology for this apparatus. See,
Yeah. And just like a good stage manager.
I can't help it. And you've got me in my chair with my headset, with my light, like I'm in it.
Of course.
I'm in it.
Who else?
That was basically going to be my answer, but you said it like 10 times better, so I'm just going to what she said.
I have two things.
We'll give
One
one to
is
Chris.
just Chris, sound is the one I'll give you.
Sound?
Yeah, just like in general sound. There are some really amazing people doing things with sound, but it's like in general. I just wish it was like easier.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's the one I'm
Get
giving to you. Now I can check the other one.
to bounce off of what Ariel said, similar with the tech folks, because you can do a lot with very little, but there are so many things that make it so much easier. Right before we started the show, me and Mikki were talking about a device called a Stream Deck, which is essentially just a block of buttons that you can assign to do exactly right there. And they're incredibly useful, but they're also not necessarily very cheap. And there are some cheaper alternatives that have arisen, but making tech that is like that is more accessible for stuff like live theater, because like sound cues, work great off of something like that, but you're limited to those 20 keys or however many you have. So if you have a show that requires a whole bunch, or you're not sure what you're going to need and you need to just preload like 30 of them or whatever, there are options, but having more accessible options that can meet those needs would be fantastic.
The only one I've heard of is Elgato. Is that right? Elgato.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like Mikki just showed on camera for those of you who are just listening. It's it looks kind of like a little keyboard in a way, and it's got buttons on it, and you can assign each of those buttons to do different tasks during your live stream. Mikki, can you tell us some of the things that you might assign a button? I mean, you're demonstrating it.
Yes. So there are a lot of things that a button might do, but like it might like play a noise, which we won't hear because Chris is the one streaming right now. That's actually like a whole other thing. I wish it was easier for other people to do things for you. Again, it is possible. There are people doing that kind of thing, but I just wish it was easier anyway. But so like
noise from mine, if you'd like, as an example.
Yeah, go for it. Like I have
cued.
an ecto noise. Anyway, go ahead.
What do I have here?
Oh my god.
Horse noises, rain, etc.
This is terrified.
That
was.
There's a horse at the door.
So you can. What you're telling me is that
Nay?
you can summon a horse.
Nay.
It's a horse. It's a horse demon. The apocalypse is upon us.
Nay!
That's all I heard.
Can a
Oh
can
my god.
Can a Stream Deck hardware button array do more than just cue sound effects? Can you assign buttons to do things that aren't sound effects?
Yes,
Move
you
things.
can.
I want it to move things.
It
Do you mean with the move tool, Ariel? Are you talking about the move tool?
Yes.
Conversation is dissolving into chaos.
As an example in this show that people in the audience can see, if you're not listening, whenever you ask me to play that clip from Arlo, I have one button that will hide this Zoom channel and our lower thirds, and then bring up that clip and Arlo's lower thirds and play that clip at the same time. And then when I push it again, it pauses that, puts those away, and brings this back up. All
So
from one button.
you've assigned an if this then this, if this then this kind of like stream of
Exactly.
commands to that button, and it does all those things for you, so you don't have to sit there and go click 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 click, move mouse, click click, blah blah blah. Okay.
Exactly.
And another thing, and this goes into like my second answer for the question about what would we like to see more of, is that I would like more integrations that relate to the chat. So like, for example, I just hit a button and the lights behind me kind of like turned red, and I'm hitting another button and my lights kind of turned more like bluish. And what I just really wish was that somebody in chat would be like, die, exclamation point, die. And then like, oh no. Ah.
Blood red lights everywhere.
Chat told me I had to die now. Oh my God, it's something I wish.
There's a very, for anyone, I don't know who could possibly be considered uninitiated in that sense, but there's a very old improv games concept of improvisers on stage doing some sort of clever play on words type of exercise or something, and when the audience has or an MC has determined that the player made a mistake, the whole audience would yell die, and then the player would either have to actually on stage fake their death, or they would just have to leave the stage or something like that. So that's a very appropriate command, Mikki, to have for the chat to say die.
Thank you.
Chris, could you hit that Elgato Stream Deck button that plays the next section of Arlo's answer regarding things that would be good or that you wish for in the future of live streaming technology?
Absolutely. Past the stop sign.
Just the latency issues, noise, sound in general, I think is like the biggest thing, because it's like you want to be able to have your speakers up so you can hear people, or you can hear the underscoring that's being provided, but you also want to make sure you're not feedbacking. A big thing is musical improv. If we can get that delay to not be so all over the place, to where a group of people could actually sing to somebody playing piano virtually. I mean, I think that would be really cool. That's a huge hurdle. And I will say, when it comes to Zoom, I'm impressed with just with how Zoom sort of has evolved along with what everyone's been trying to do. And there's a lot of hurdles to it, and there's a lot of things that they do sometimes that like screws it up. But overall, as a platform, being able to have the scenes to cut back and forth, I think if there was just a little bit more control we had as a performance ensemble, if there was an app that was specifically designed for it, and maybe within that app there's audio routing things, instead of us having to use all kinds of different plugins and programs to route audio, maybe if it's just a simple thing that's put in, one video conferencing app.
Yeah. Great minds think alike, Mikki.
I feel honored.
Arlo, by the way, I don't know if I said this, but Arlo is busy at a festival right now. He did our interview during Nisai Week in Little Tokyo here in Los Angeles, backstage from the theater where he's working a show. And there were a couple of times during our interview where he said, I would ask a question and he would say, like, then kind of he would have to go quiet, and he was like looking. I could tell that something was happening where he had to be quiet for a minute. I hope my amazingly smooth edits where I reordered some things aren't even detectable. Now that I've said it, of course they are. But yeah, that's the magic of video, is that you can cut things and edit things. I cut a lot of myself off from yammering on. Yeah, I think a big part of the technology that has just been for a year or more now that's just come back again and again and again is audio latency. We're using StreamYard for this because then there's no audio latency. It's okay, well, yeah, but that's not 100% the solution. And people have been fooled because of highly produced, highly moneyed online performances where things have been synced in post-production, like immediately, like, with very little time before they are actually aired or something. And it appears that everything is actually happening perfectly in real time. I don't know if that's possible. Is it possible to have video and audio from multiple locations musically perfectly synced? Is that actually happening, or is it smoke and mirrors right now?
I know that Hideout has done like musical improv.
That's impressive.
It's very impressive. And it has been explained to me before that it's like, you use loop back and you're like taking into somebody and they're hearing the loop back and then they're adding to it.
It's what Arlo and Alex do they do a show called Made Up Music. We're going to hear about it in a minute, but they do a show called Made Up Music, and they have managed to be in real time with one another. But that's just two people. And sort of they're already in sync as humans and as musicians. So it's sort of not like 6 or 7 improvisers and a musician.
Yeah, I feel like the way it feels to me is like anything you want to do right now, there's a way to do it. But for a lot of it, especially with live theater or virtual theater, it's like, yeah, you can do that, but you're going to have to download these 3 separate programs and route this through this and do this. And I'd be really curious to see where virtual theater at is like a year from now, because I feel like there's probably a lot of companies like Zoom or other people that are looking into alternatives for virtual theater, because everyone is having to do virtual theater right now. But it takes time to come up with these things and figure out what people need and what works and what doesn't. So I feel like right now there's still this void of improvements for that. But like, who knows where by the time everything opens back up again and we don't necessarily need as much, there will probably be a whole bunch of improvements that we could rely on.
Well, which will be great for, some of us who are going to be continuing to perform with friends from other countries and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mikki, were you going to say something and I just talked?
No, I awkwardly whispered, "I'll need it." That's all. So it was totally fine that you acted like that didn't happen.
Oh man. Well, we'll cut this out before it goes live. Chris, when is this going out on Twitch?
But
Don't worry about it.
What,
Fix it in post.
what have y'all experienced in the way of like discoveries, innovations, workarounds, moments of inspiration, light bulbs going off in your head, at that sort of thing? Have you surprised yourself, or have you and people you're working with surprised one another with moments like that?
Constantly.
Yeah, all the time, honestly.
Every week, like just about every week, every month, I feel like somebody says something, and it is always revolutionary. But I would also say 50% of the time I'm like, yeah,
Like, as in, of course that.
of course that.
wish I had that last weekend.
Yeah, wish I had that last weekend.
When I did 3 shows.
Yeah. I guess when you're working, we're all sort of lucky to work with really creative people, I think, speaking for all of us. And so therefore, of course, innovations are going to happen because, creative thinkers, actors, musicians, improvisers tend to think outside of normal, guidelines or guardrails or something, and think outside of normal standard operating procedure, and are willing to stretch their imagination to come up with a solution for something. Chris, Arlo's next section, he talks about a couple of those moments that he's had with, especially with Alex.
So Alex Kahn and I do a show called Made Up Music, where we will produce a song together. And, we figured out how to send each other audio in real time using this plugin called Audio Movers. And that allowed us to do the show together. But not only that, but that also allowed us to live score shows together. So like there were some shows that we did, Maddie had a show where Alex and I would live score it, and it felt like him and I could actually like jam and play together, even though we were miles apart and in different rooms on different computers. So that was like a huge, like, oh, this is cool, and it still comes with its challenges, but if it could, at least it did sort of capture like a sense of I can be with an individual and play music and still be creative in this sort of a way. And that to me was really exciting because it's like a dangerous sort of improv dance, and sort of compensating for maybe there's a little bit of delay here or there, and really having to like be on the same page as far as like whatever it was that we were underscoring. So I will say there are definitely times where we were doing that, we were underscoring a show, and there were moments that felt like, wow, that was crazy that happened. And not only was it like he's just one instrument and I'm playing another instrument, but we're like triggering loops and like doing all kinds of stuff. And there were times where it felt like, whoa, this is This is kind of insane.
Yeah, plugins. It helps to be, tech savvy and know about grabbing plugins and that kind of thing. I'm not at that stage.
Yeah, say thank you, Arlo. Gonna write that down.
Yeah. Who has advice, tips, thoughts, encouragement, sort of a little bit of a brief online mentoring comment or two for people out there that might be watching or listening down the road and putting stuff on a live stream, whether it's personal or on behalf of their company, and then mine.
Google is your friend. Google everything. Or talk to Mikki.
I was going to say Mikki
My
Marvel.
inbox after this.
Mikki Marvel. If Mikki Marvel is holding any type of programming, do it. I would say even ask someone. So if your theater is like, hey, I'd like to, what's the streaming thing? Say, oh, Mikki Marvel's doing this thing. Could you sponsor me? Like, it's an investment. It really, I mean, it's immediately changed my career path, as I just wanted to learn more about, how do I help my theater survive? And I mean, it's immediately changed my career path. And it's not going away. It's not going to go away. I think it's made theaters, again, accessible is just the word of the day, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So I would say, if you're looking for, something, if you need that experience, like, I would say a program, like, to learn how to do it is okay. It's okay. Second wave of streamers, join us. It's okay if you weren't there in the beginning. I think it's a skill worth learning, and or having, like, to find a sponsor to do it, and or saving up those pennies and doing it yourself. It was a worthwhile investment for me to take a course on it. Oh, so that's what I did. Surprise! Someone taught me how to do it, and I can't thank Mikki and the National Women's Theater Festival enough, because again, it immediately changed, enhanced my career. So.
And,
Lovely endorsement.
and I think this is going to be the advice that I give is, one, kind of as we've talked about, this is going to be different from in-person theater. And that's going to be okay. And, embrace the things that you love, accept the things you don't love, because there's going to be things you don't love and you just can't change them. But accept the things that you do love, like the chat. I love every single chat ever. And then the second kind of piece of this that I'll give is that bad streams will happen, and your first stream will be the worst stream.
Will be bad.
So just get that out of the way and never talk about it again. I still have the video of mine. So.
One day you should post that as a
Ollie.
inspiration.
Yeah, I think especially, in this virtual space, there's so many factors at play. I mean, there's a lot of factors with live theater too, but in a virtual space, there's everyone's individual internet and what programs people have and what tech people have, and there's so many factors at play that can affect everything. And I think there's this fear that it's like, oh, if anything technical is wrong, it's the worst show ever. And it's like, people at home that are watching and the other actors and everything, everyone is basically in the same space right now, and we're all dealing with the same tech issues at one time or another in one way or another. So I think the audience is very good at rolling with the show when things go technically wrong, which has been a delight, honestly. Not that they don't roll with live theater, mishaps or whatever. But people know that your internet drop. That's what it is. People know because they're dealing with the same things in their own personal Zooms too. So.
Yes, each time we stream a show, it is a miracle.
Every time. Or my favorite is when the chat is still going and they're like, it froze. Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you, sis. I can't hear anything. Ditto.
It is interesting. I didn't think we were going to get to this place in this conversation, but I'm going to go there. It is interesting that after this long into the existence of FaceTime and video conference calls in general, that people still I don't want to say it. It's going to sound so mean, but people still have to say to someone, "You're muted. You're muted." Instead of just gently being like, "Hey, I can't hear you, man."
I always give the you could just say, "Oh, I can't hear you." Oh, couldn't hear you.
You can definitely tell when I did a leadership workshop the other day, and you can tell the people who are attending the workshop and those of us who have possibly worked in the web world, and they absolutely. And I'm like, you know what? There's probably 3 other people who will inform that person, who are supposed to inform that person that they are muted. They are being paid to do that, and or graciously volunteered. It's not just to the audience. It's not always your role. Which is maybe, but you know what? That's interesting that we've said that, because is that not the role we fall into when we become an audience member and you're watching a film or a television show, and this has just brought it even closer, because in a theater you still have some courtesies that you're affording your actors.
Yeah.
But now they can just tell us.
And I was going to make the joke, I do want someone to tell me that I'm muted, though.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Don't just be like.
That's a good point.
Because as we learned earlier, like I was talking, you guys could hear me, the chat could not. So sometimes, the people that you're with don't know that XYZ is a problem, and the people in the chat are like, "Hey, excuse, I would like to be involved in this show."
I bought a ticket.
Yeah.
Before I brought us down this rabbit hole, we were talking about advice, tips, and thoughts. Could you roll, Chris, the next section of Arlo for advice, tips, and thoughts about for other people?
Takeaways from all this, I think that learning to be a little bit more patient, learning to try to really be in second circle with whoever you're working with and anticipate, and there is some magic and there is some stuff to be mined from all this, and definitely when Alex and I can be in the same room and score something again, I think that some of the techniques that we have learned that we were able to sort of master over this period of time, we'll be able to to bring into something live on stage. So I recently did a workshop for this group, Support Black Theater, and it was about digital theater and OBS and just how it was essentially like a how-to. But something that I sort of realized that I shared with the group as I was preparing this workshop was that anybody can learn this stuff, and anyone should, I think, at least have an understanding of what is possible online and what digital theater could be, and not even just in an improv sense, but in a pure theatrical sense as well, that so much can be done and told in this medium. And if we have to be in sort of the situation that we're in longer, that there's no reason to not be creative, and that having just a general understanding of the technology, how things work, will inspire writers, it'll inspire directors, it'll inspire performers. So I don't think you have to be a tech person to try to understand or appreciate this stuff. I think that anybody that is a creative individual, especially people coming from theatrical backgrounds, they can use this. And so I just want to encourage everybody that is out there, everybody that's watching, to take advantage of the technology. A lot of it is just free, and to really start to be creative, because I think even when we come back to normal, there are elements of this that we can bring into our productions that can elevate our productions, or that we can continue to evolve creatively.
Yeah, here.
Well said.
Right?
Yes, here.
Brava.
So I'm sorry that Pim couldn't join us, because we're basically out of time. We're going to do round 2 next week with other texts, and maybe we'll just do a gigantic roundtable and add Pim and let's go around with some, what are you up to? Where can we find you? Self-promotion, social media handles, that sort of stuff. And we have one from Arlo also, Chris, just FYI. Who wants to go?
Mikki?
Okay, hello there. I'm Mikki Marvel. Twitch and Instagram are my platforms of choice, but I'm Mikki Marvel. I don't have a streaming schedule because, fun fact, that was not great for my mental health. Mental health and streaming is a whole other conversation. So I have no stream schedule. I just randomly post. Guess what? I'm going to go live in an hour. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just Mikki Marvel. Find me places.
Thank you.
Worst outro.
I'll follow. I'm Ariel Gray at ariel.faye.gray on Instagram. I am, because of my wonderful experience with the National Women's Theater Festival under the guidance of Mikki Marvel, I immediately got a gig working with Black Girls Love the Bard as their stage manager and streaming technician. So check out at Black Girls Love LUV the Bard on Instagram to see our upcoming fall season. And then I'm also, as you heard, a writing coach with Unlocking Creativity Community. That's under the beautiful guise of SD Ubuntu. Links to that on my Instagram. So I would love to connect with anyone who would like to know. Also, I'm a parent artist, which is a whole nother chat. But just want to plug that virtual theater, like I said, has made the world more accessible to parent artists everywhere. So very excited for what this has done for my career, and hope others don't shy away from it.
Great. Chris?
Absolutely. I stream myself on Twitch under Robo Dessert, ROBODESSERT. I stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 12 to 4 p.m. Pacific time, primarily video game content, though I dabble in some other things from time to time. But you can find me on basically any platform under Robo Dessert, TikTok, YouTube. I also co-run a gaming and comedy YouTube channel with Robert Highwind called Co-op Comedy, youtube.com/co-op comedy. And we post videos every weekday. So.
Thank you, sir. And if you could please roll Arlo's.
Hey, you can find me on Instagram at Hey Arlo Sanders. I perform my show Made Up Music every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and it's on YouTube at Outside In Theater. That's youtube.com/Outside In Theater with an RE.
You've been a delight, all of you, and Arlo. And sorry that Pim seems to be in the dark with a power outage out there in the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill neighborhood. Thank you to Doc Farrell and Charlotte Brown for being here as our Twitch chat moderator team. Chris Dionne has been our OBS operator technician. Mikki, Ariel, and Chris have been your live guests. I'm Mike Rock. Thank you for joining Impro Talk. For now, thank you so much.
Bye.